Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Paul, and in this Games.com video, we're going to be discussing and analysing tech news which, as usual, has popped up over the past 24 or so hours. We're going to be starting things out with Intel, specifically starting out with the 9th generation processors, the fact that these processors will supposedly be soldered and offer better overclocking support, and finally, that the Z390 motherboards will be launching this quarter. We're going to start things out with the motherboards first. So before anyone starts to panic about their Z370 board being old hat, that's not really the case. There are essentially very few differences between the two chipsets. Intel's own product comparison actually highlights this rather well. Processor overclocking is the same, number of memory channels is the same, we still have smart sound technology, Optane support is the same. We do have SDXC support, which is an improvement. A number of I/O lanes remains the same. USB 3.1s is the same, but there is an improvement with USB 3.1 ports when it comes to Gen 2. With the Z370, there were 0 of these natively. Now we actually see up to 6 of these. This is actually something that the lower end boards did actually have over the Z370, so that's definitely a nice thing to see. But everything else is identical. There is no improvements to, let's say, the SATA ports or RAID or anything like that. So these boards are very much just a small tweak over what we currently have. By the end of this year, we'll also see Basin Falls replace Skylake X, and a small update actually concerning Z370 compatibility with 8-core processors. You might recall that MSI were one of the first to release a beta BIOS which would support next generation processors. This has since been increased, and now we have ASRock, Asus as well joining in on the fray. There is a question to see whether we're going to get like the B360s, which will support 8-core processors. The reason behind that is that we're uncertain whether those motherboards would be able to power them simply because of VRM and power distribution on the board. So that is the only sketchy thing that is unknown right now. The website PC Builders Club came to have information that the 9th series of processors, which is the Coffee Lake Refresh, will actually launch on the 1st of August this year, so we don't have too long to wait at all. Now, there are a couple of very cool things about this. The first is that supposedly this series of processors will actually be soldered, which has been a request amongst enthusiasts for some time. In fact, just recently in a video when I said, well, what I would like Intel to fix, I said that I would love for Intel to actually solder, at the very least, the K series of processors. Even if not the regular series, but the K series being soldered would be certainly a good thing. Now, with them doing this, from the leaked information, we actually see increase in clock speed, and it goes up to 5.5 GHz on average. The 8086K hits around 5.3 GHz on average, so that's a couple of hundred megahertz just from the simple fact that this refresh is actually soldered, and I wouldn't be surprised if that's primarily the difference between the two series of processors. So there is an inevitable other question here. What about the 8-core processors, the 12 threads? Unfortunately, the PC Builders Club website does not give exact information regarding the 8-core processors. There's a couple of theories right now that's going around. The first is that this is a paper launch, therefore the full series of processors might come a little later. The second theory is that we're going to see just a few processors, most likely the 9700K or perhaps the 9600K and so on, and then later on we're going to see the 9800 or 9900 or whatever it ends up being called. Honestly speaking, if Intel can nail this, and obviously there's the question there, of let's call it the 9900K, and if they can get the cores up to like 5.2 GHz, I'm going to assume that we don't quite get 5.5 GHz with an 8-core processor, but let's say that they can hit 5.2, 5.3 GHz with an 8-core 16-thread processor. I have to admit, I think that that would be an incredible amount of performance. It's not quite HEDT levels by any stretch of the imagination, but it's enough for most users. And it would also put a lot of pressure on AMD. Of course, there's a good chance that the 8-core from Intel will be considerably more expensive. And I won't be surprised if AMD do manage to cut the prices of the Ryzen 2000 series. In fact, we've already seen some significant cuts of the 2600s and a few other really good deals. Obviously, the 1000 series is at bargain basement pricing right now. Even Threadripper, you can get really good value for money. I think it was like the 1950X the other day I saw for like $650 US, which is quite frankly a complete steal. So once again, the two companies going at it is really good news for us as consumers, because we get to choose, of course, which is the best product for our wallet and our needs. So one of the buzzwords that Intel, of course, have pushed a lot recently is 3D Xpoint Memory. And they and Micron are hard at work putting together the second generation of 3D Xpoint Memory, but things aren't exactly rosy in the relationship. And after this, the two companies will be parting ways and basically figuring out what they want to do with the technology on their own and branching out independently. The manufacturing of the memory will continue in the Intel Micron Flash Technologies facility, which is in Lehigh, Utah. And both companies issue a statement indicates that the next generation of 3D Xpoint memory will be ready by the first half of 2019, although it's ambiguous whether this is engineering samples or whether this is final production silicon. So once the first and second generation of Xpoint memory is finished, each company will go on to develop the tech specifically for the needs of its perceived customers. Micron, meanwhile, said, and I quote, "We are excited about these products that we are developing based on advanced technology, which will allow customers to take advantage of unique memory and storage capabilities. By developing 3D Xpoint technology independently, Micron can better optimize the technology for our roadmap while maximizing the benefits for our customers and shareholders." Intel said, and this quote comes from Rob Crook, from Intel's Non-Volatile Memory Solutions Group, "We intend to build on this momentum and extend our leadership with Optane, which combines with our high-density 3D NAND technology offers the best solutions for today's computing and storage needs," end quote. And while we're on the memory technology subject, we might as well discuss low-power DDR5, which is being pioneered by Samsung. They actually introduced low-power DDR4 in 2014, so it's high time that we see a replacement. And obviously, as mobile systems become increasingly more powerful, like your cell phones and even small form factor systems which benefit from low power memory, the move to have high capacity and very fast memory access times is of course becoming more critical. Jinman Han, who is the Senior Vice President of Memory Product Planning over at Samsung, said, and I quote, "This development of 8GB low-power DDR5 represents major steps forward for low-power mobile memory solutions. We will continue to expand our next-generation 10nm class DRAM lineup as we accelerate the move towards use of premium memory across the global landscape." So this 8GB, which of course is 1GB, that's 1 gigabit, which is 1 gigabyte of low-power DDR5, has transfer rates of 6400 megabytes per second. This will be about 1.5 times faster than mobile RAM, which is currently used in flagship mobile devices. It also won't overwrite cells which have a value of 0, and will also contain a deep sleep mode which cuts its power usage in half. So all of these different things together means that you will see an average of around a 30% power saving with low power DDR5 compared to the current technologies. And finally, we're going to finish the video with a few leaks of the Samsung Galaxy 10. It will actually have a flagship model which will have a 6.4-inch screen. There will be 3 models in total, and the 2 larger ones will have a fingerprint scanner built right onto their screens, which is a very different approach to what Apple are taking with their iPhones. The smallest size will be 5.8 inches, there will be another with a 6.1 inch, and then finally you get the huge one, which as I just mentioned is 6.4 inches. And they will feature an ultrasonic FOD, or fingerprint on display technology, which means that you'll have a fingerprint scanner embedded directly within the front display of the phone itself, which is pretty darn cool, at least in my opinion. With all of that said, hopefully you have enjoyed the video. Normal stuff, like, share, comment and subscribe, and prepare to be inundated with a whole bunch of videos over the weekend with some pretty cool content. With all of that said, take care of yourselves, and bye for now.